Welcome to the Ex-Religious Support Network. Our aim is to provide a safe space for people who have left or are thinking of leaving their religion. To find us on Meetup, simply search for Ex-Religious Support Network. On Facebook, search for Ex-Religious Discussion Group. My name is Les Allen and I'm the group facilitator. This is the fifth session in a series of sessions exploring various aspects of religious trauma presented by professional counsellor Caroline Winzenried. Caroline started this series with an overview with the hidden toll of religious trauma. Her next three sessions were on the persistence of purity culture, the nature of identity and relationships, and the eternal sinner. In today's session, Caroline will explore how people leaving their religion make sense of their existence. Religion has very clear-cut explanations for our purpose on earth and for what happens when we die. When you leave a religion, you are suddenly unmoored from these meaning-making frameworks and are given the tremendous task of finding these answers for yourself. Many people feel lost and alone in this search for meaning. In today's session, Caroline will explore the challenges that religious trauma can pose in making sense of the world. So a little about Caroline. Caroline Winzenried is a counsellor working from Boronia here in Victoria, Australia. Caroline works from an existential humanistic lens with individuals across the lifespan, from adolescent to older adults, on issues including anxiety, depression, and interpersonal relationships. Her areas of special interest include working with religious trauma and grief and loss. So please welcome Caroline.
Thanks, Liz, for that introduction, and thank you so much, everyone, for having me here tonight. I'm really excited to be here and to talk about, I think, one of the biggest challenges of leaving a religion, which is not just kind of that existential anxiety that comes with that, but also the whole framework of meaning that religion gives and what to do with yourself once you find that kind of falling away. How do you make sense of meaning and build your own new meanings? Some of you may recognize me previously from some other presentations on religious trauma, but today, as I said, I really want to zoom in on this concept of existential anxiety and meaning making in religion. Okay, so to start us off, I'd just like to give a brief outline of where we'll be going tonight. I'd like to start with kind of giving an overview of the role that these existential concerns play in the process of questioning and ultimately leaving a religion. Next, I'd like to take a look at what this means to lose these meaning-making frameworks and the trauma that can come with this loss of a worldview. Finally, I'd like to explore some of the positives that can emerge from this meaning-making journey. The journey of leaving a religion often starts with just a single question. For example, the question could be, is it really wrong to be gay? Why is what I'm learning in Sunday school contradicting what I'm learning in my science class? Or why would God let all of those innocent people die in that natural disaster? The question can be moral, emotional, intellectual, or intuitive, and is often in response to a piece of information, a particular moment, or an event that casts doubt on a core tenet of religious teachings. Research shows that common catalysts include social and moral concerns, issues related to science, negative life experiences, and exposure to suffering in the world. It could even be delving too deep into one's faith and finding that maybe the dots weren't connecting anymore. After coming face to face with a question like this, many people experience a domino effect in which several other questions begin to follow. This tends to be especially true when someone is very committed to their religion, or when their religion places a strong emphasis on having special knowledge or being the one and only truth. In cases like this, it can be challenging or even impossible to simply reject one part of the package without calling into question all of the other parts. A key reason for this is that religion is a worldview. It's a constellation of moral ideologies, ontological philosophies, and meaning-making frameworks that provide structure to the human existence and solace during times of strife. These different parts are all packaged together and presented in the form of a single worldview, as if each part works together, like a set of cogs in a clock. And we have some pretty complicated words up here. Honestly, I can't remember all of the definitions for these, so we're just going to leave those there and just talk about what they mean. So worldview encompasses all of these different concepts and belief systems, including beliefs on the nature of reality, the nature of the universe and the origins of the universe. It also encompasses beliefs about where our knowledge comes from and questions about the existence of a higher power. It also includes the nature and purpose of humankind and the purpose and meaning of the universe, as well as moral questions about what is good and what is bad. So you can see, kind of looking at this and all that's involved here, that what starts as a single isolated question can often have a knock-on effect. If a worldview is presented as unquestionably true, watertight in its cohesion and coherence, then it isn't possible to call only one isolated part into question. In studies on leaving religion, participants describe these first doubts as giving them permission to start asking questions about the truth of their faith. They describe it as kind of opening the door. And for some, this newly opened door prompts an active and frenzied effort to seek out information that will bring them the truth. And with it, they hope liberation. For others, they describe trying to fight the questioning process and trying hard to hold on to their faith. One research participant describes her experience this way. You desperately want to hold on to what you believe, what's giving you purpose and meaning up to this point, and it's just slipping through your fingers, and you can't hold on no matter how hard you try. The process of disbelieving and leaving a religion is not a quick one. It often takes several months or years. Many people undergo a lengthy period of cognitive dissonance in which they hold two contradictory beliefs and seek desperately to reconcile them. One research participant describes this feeling very poignantly. He puts it this way: you get this thing where you can hold it all together for so long, but you are increasingly trying to fill in the cracks. While there is still limited research on what this breaking point looks like for people, existing research suggests that the final nail in the coffin is often intellectual in nature. Even if the catalyst question is moral or intuitive, the last and most important question is often the question of whether or not God's existence can be accepted from a rational standpoint. This question of God's existence is critical. It is the glue that holds every other tenet of a religion in place. Without a God, there is no rationale for the philosophical and moral frameworks of a religion as they are. The entire worldview collapses in the face of this. There is a tremendous amount at stake in rejecting a worldview that you have held for several years, or in many cases, all of your life, because these are the core systems of meaning around which you structure your whole life. In rejecting these worldviews, you have to come to a new understanding of your whole life and of the world that you inhabit. You have to look back on all of the choices that you've made up until this point through a completely different light. And those choices, some of which may have had critical implications for the rest of your life, might not hold the same meaning for you anymore. So what happens when your worldview is shattered? Religious worldviews offer understandings of the world that hold in place three inherent assumptions that researcher Yanoff Bullman proposes are key to coping and functioning in the world. These assumptions are that the world is meaningful, that the world is benevolent, and that I am worthy. Taken together, these assumptions form what is called the assumptive world. According to his theory, these assumptions allow people to feel capable, safe, and in control of what happens to them. Yanoff Bullman's shattered assumptions theory proposes that when these assumptions are challenged in a fundamental way, it can be extremely distressing and traumatic. Faced with a crisis of faith, all of these assumptions are suddenly called into question. What meaning is there in the world if my moral code feels unfounded? If I'm not here to do God's work? If maybe there is no life after death? Is the world really so benevolent if God isn't looking out for me? And here I thought I was a child of God, made in his image. I thought I was special. How can I feel a sense of self-worth when suddenly all I am is a small speck in this vast universe? When the world no longer feels meaningful, things that once felt joyful and fulfilling can suddenly feel despairingly pointless. Study participants describe these feelings as a sense that nothing felt real anymore, a sense that the ground had crumbled beneath their feet, that they were floating or waking up from a dream. In some studies, participants described feeling as if they had been in a simulation akin to the Matrix. They expressed a sense that they had to deprogram themselves and could now see that many of their loved ones were still going on living in a simulation, as if they existed on a plane of unreality that could no longer be reached. Many people seek answers to questions of meaning through sources such as science, philosophy, or humanist frameworks. For some, the frameworks that they find in these sources provide solace and answers. But for others, these feelings initially feel unsatisfying or even frightening. I'd like to read a quote from a research study participant who expressed what it was like for him to lose this sense of divine purpose. He says, "I learned about evolution in school, but I never had to think about what it meant to think that we might have evolved from apes. Now it's like, if we're just like apes, just like any other animals, then really nothing makes us any better or any different. If that's the case, we're really not that special. We just do a good job of telling ourselves that." And this thought to him was crushing, this feeling that before he had felt this sense of connection to the world and that it had been made for him, that humans were special. And now as he was reconsidering all of this, that all seemed to fall away. In the context of a religious worldview, the loss of a meaningful world is inherently tied to the loss of a benevolent world and its divine mystery. Many religions advocate the belief in this sort of divine mystery that even if we don't understand why, everything happens for a reason. The key theme in religious texts, such as the Bible and the Torah, is that God is watching over his people. In Exodus, God liberates the Jews from their enslavement in Egypt. And in the Gospels, Jesus tells his followers that he is dying on the cross to save everyone from sin. Many who are religious feel that a higher power is watching over them and protecting them. They may find a lot of comfort in this belief. Even suffering is seen as having a reason, such as in the book of Job, when the titular character is robbed of everything: his children, his health, and his wealth. These hardships are presented as a test of faith in God. And when he passes this test, he is blessed with even more children, greater wealth, and greater health than he had to begin with. And this is a really common story that is passed around, especially in Christian settings, to say, this is the meaning of suffering. You're being tested. There's a reason for this. And within a religious worldview, even when you can't understand how or why you're being tested, or you may sense that you're being punished and you don't really understand why, you still have faith that your suffering must somehow be for this greater good. When this understanding of suffering no longer seems rational, it can be really challenging to find ways to cope with suffering seeming randomness and lack of purpose. These beliefs in a divine mystery also impact our view of self-worth. In many religions, people are taught that humans are special and that the world was created just for us. I'd like to read another quote from a research study participant about his disillusionment with this. He says, "Before, anywhere I go, I was reminded of the Heavenly Father. The trees, the mountains, the rivers, all of it gave me peace and comfort because it was as if it had all been put there for me. But now everything still looks the same, but it feels dull and dead." While the search for other perspectives and worldviews is often lengthy, and it can be a deeply challenging exercise, it can also be incredibly rewarding. Research participants describe finding hope in new perspectives and in their newfound capacity for independent critical thinking. After your previous worldview has collapsed, it can be really daunting to feel suddenly tasked with building this from scratch. You feel like you're on your own and you don't know where to turn to. This is especially true in the sense that most other belief frameworks are simply not as comprehensive as what religion tends to offer. This is because worldviews encompass several different layers, including morality, the nature of humankind, our purpose, and the source of knowledge. Whereas religion touts that it has this all-in-one package, those who leave religion often have to put together their own worldview from several different sources. Sources such as science, philosophy, humanism, atheism, and the arts can provide these pieces with which to construct a new worldview. And while it can be a major undertaking to assess all of these different perspectives and explore them, and to pick which pieces you want to integrate and which feel right to you, it is also an amazing exercise in understanding your own identity and in building something that feels truly yours. And although this process is challenging, it is also transformative. Research shows that in undergoing this process, people develop increased emotional reflexivity, the ability to get in touch with and be aware of your emotions and how they affect you. People also develop a deeper sense of who they are as an individual and what their own values are, paving the way for a deeper sense of meaning that feels authentic to who they are. Additionally, this process helps people to develop a sense of self-efficacy in which they feel empowered and capable of navigating the world. Even when faced with the existential anxiety of the fact that they may never have an answer to some of life's big questions, this process helps people to eventually build a much greater tolerance for that uncertainty. While building your own worldview is an incredibly rewarding and worthwhile process, it is also a massive undertaking. It can feel isolating to embark on this journey, especially when you are used to sharing a worldview with your loved ones and your community. I'd encourage you to reach out and connect with others as you navigate this, especially in support groups like this one, with people who are maybe on their own journeys of self-discovery. One thing that the research shows is that it makes a really big difference to be able to connect with people who have been there and people who can understand what it's like to feel that their whole world has been shattered. They've been there to build the pieces up back together. And it makes such a difference to be able to talk about those experiences. Support groups like this are a great place to share your story with others, maybe to talk about how you did that, how you navigated that. Telling your story can help you make sense of those experiences, and it creates a personal narrative that helps make this story that feels authentic to you. It can also help others who are going through similar journeys. It lets them know that it can be done and gives them hope. If you are feeling overwhelmed or unsure of where to start on your journey, you may also find that it could be helpful to devote some time to exploring this with the support of a mental health practitioner, such as a counselor or a psychologist, who can guide you in this process and provide you with coping skills to use if you're experiencing intense anxiety around these topics. And finally, on this slide, I've listed some studies that I referenced during this presentation. I'd particularly recommend Dr. Marlene Winnell's work on this topic. And that's all from me. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Caroline. So just let me say again that you can access the videos and podcasts of previous sessions by visiting the resources section of the Rational Realm website at www.rationalrealm.com. And from there, you can also download Caroline's presentation slides.